Hey guys, it's Scott Ulmer here. We are doing a video series on a rehab project, A to Z, things that they don't tell you on HGTV, some real down and dirty nuggets that hopefully you can take some really good things from. So I need to tell you, I got big money button up today, changed my attire because we're talking numbers today, and I'm just making fun of myself because I'm usually wearing a t-shirt. So because this video is a big deal, I dressed up for you guys. So anyways, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to break down how you structure a terms deal. What are you looking for, and ultimately terms, I'm going to define what that means, but why we like terms is because you have the ability to maximize what you're making on every deal. Terms deals allow you to maximize the gain on any investment property that you're dealing with. And I'm going to tell you exactly what that means and why. And so let me go ahead and go up to the whiteboard here and show you what I've got written down. So as you remember, we're dealing with the property on Wilson. Over here in my left hand, your right is going to be the playlist. It'll show you how we got here from A to Z, from the rehab walkthrough to exit strategies to buying a house and getting a check. Some really, really good tidbits and takeaways. In particular, the renovation. We get a lot of requests on how we come up with our numbers, how we ultimately value and cost out renovations, and how we decide on what exactly we're going to do. Don't make it the Taj Mahal. You're not going to live there. Biggest mistake people make when renovating is they try to make it as if it's going to be theirs. They want to make it perfect and beautiful, and that's great, but don't go over the top when you're doing rehab. So in this case, I'm going to tell you exactly how to structure a terms deal and how you can make 4 to 5 paydays on one deal. And if you can hit all 5 paydays, which I'm going to show you what that means, you are going to become a certified badass because you're a Pentagon Profit Sphere candidate, a successful person achieving those. And I smile because it's a big deal. We actually have a sign over here. We have done master classes just on the Pentagon Profit Sphere and how you can create 5 paydays on one deal. Pretty cool. So, okay, so I've got 2 columns here. I've got column over here, which is controlling the property, and that deals with more retail based. I'm going to get to that in just a second here and tell you exactly what that means and why that's a really large component of our business here day to day down in Jacksonville, Florida. But as we've been talking about this property on Wilson, we own the property. And so I'm going to tell you the paydays on Wilson and ultimately how we're going to sell the property on terms. So first, let me identify or define what terms means. I've shared that in some of the prior videos, but I want to identify a terms deal is, in our world, a structured agreement to buy the home. For us, we're selling the home to somebody. It's a structured agreement for someone to buy the home from us where they put money down as a down payment. That money is fully credited off of the price when they go get their bank loan. They make monthly payments to us for a predetermined period of time, at which point they are required to finance or pay us off with a traditional or institutional bank loan. The document or mechanism that we use in terms deals primarily when we are selling, so we are selling the property, we use a lease option and or a lease purchase. Those are somewhat interchangeable. When we're buying on terms, which I'll get to in just a second, we use an agreement for deed or a contract for deed, and that's a little nugget for you guys. It's a very valuable document that we've used for 8 or 9 years at this point very successfully, paid tens of thousands of dollars to create it, and it's been tremendously successful for us. And so contracts for deed, agreements for deed, land installment contracts, bond for deed, there are different variations in every state. They all do about the same thing, but we've learned over time that state by state has their own rules and regs, and so always check with your local legal counsel before ever using any sort of legal document or legal instrument and putting it out on the street. You always want to get verification and clarification from your attorney. And so when we're selling, we sell on a lease with an option to buy, and that is really how you define a terms deal. Now, over on Wilson, we are going to do a partial rehab on the property and let somebody else take the long dollar, or I should say, create additional equity. So we're going to leave a little money on the table for our buyer, let them do some of the cosmetic work, and that will enable us to sell it on a work for equity. They'll do some work, get a better price on the property, at which point we don't have to come out of pocket with as much money on the rehab. It's kind of a nice hybrid of a flip, if you will. So when you own the property, you're typically buying them when they're distressed. So cash deals usually are distressed. Look, you can create some great paydays when you're controlling pretty houses, retail properties. And I'm going to define that again in more detail when I get to this side of the board. But when you're dealing with distressed property, someone who's either behind in payments or in this case, the house needs a lot of work. If you saw the prior videos, it would be really hard to move into that house the way it sits. Maybe not impossible, but it's not really in great condition. So the house needs work. And in a house like that or a case like that, almost always, in order for you to buy it and put money into it, you've got to pay cash and actually transfer legal title. And that's exactly what we're doing in the case of Wilson. So now we own it as well as control. We have legal title, which obviously gives us full control of the property, and now we're going to sell it. So there are really 4 paydays in this scenario. First and foremost is the overfi. Who remembers the Webster's word of the day, the overfinancing? It's a great term, it's a great strategy. We always want you to get paid when you buy the house. Buy a house, get a check. Even if it's $5,000 that comes off the top, it's money that's in your pocket. It pays for gas, for time, for marketing, for your trips back and forth, for overseeing the contractors, to overseeing the sale of the house. Having some money in your pocket is really, really important for just morale, frankly, in some cases. If you have a house that you're rehabbing, you're not going to sell it and recognize a profit or any sort of cash flow for some period of time. If it's a short rehab or a work for equity, or you may have it in 30 or 60 days. If it's a full rehab, it may take a few months, and then the sale, the whole 9 yards. We want you to have money in your pocket up front. It's a lesson I learned very early on from my father. Always get money at the time you buy the house. Buy a house, get a check, overfinance, borrow a little more than you need. That's good spending money, good living money. The second payday, when you own the property and are selling it on a lease option, is the down payment. We require every buyer that we work with to have at least 5 to 10% down, 5 to 10% of the value of the property, with a minimum of $10,000. Now, be careful how you say that to your buyers. When buyers call in, we say, how much money are you working with as far as the down payment is concerned today? We don't quote them. We don't say it's 5 to 10% or it's a minimum of $10,000. We ask them, we get what they're working with today, and then we'll explore that a little more. If they have less than $10,000, we'll tell them, well, we do have a minimum $10,000 requirement. What are you working with today? And if you had a house, or we had a house that was something you loved, how long would it take you to come up with at least $10,000? So we've got some ways that we will parse through the questions with our buyer. We always want to know the maximum amount that they can put down. The deeper they're in, the more down payment that they put in, the better for you, because it's cash in your pocket today, and the more likely they are to buy the property. So we always want to get our buyers with a sizable down payment up front. Cash flow is what you're generating on a monthly basis. The cash flow is the difference between what you are collecting from your tenant buyer and what you are paying out to your investor or bank. So there should be, ideally in every deal, a cash flow spread. Now, if you have a partner who's your investor, and I gave this example yesterday, or I should say in a prior video, that you don't have a monthly payment because your investor puts the money up, you do the work, you guys have some sort of a split, whether it's 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, doesn't matter. All those payments go into the coffer and then get split up. So it still could be construed as cash flow, but what I'm saying here specifically is the difference between what you're collecting and what you're paying. There should be a spread. Love to see $200 to $300 a month on every deal. And then fourth is the back end equity, the big kiss in the back. And that's really where you can have your biggest payday. And that very simply means the difference between what you have sold it for to your buyer and what you have bought it for. And there should be a big spread at the very back of the deal. In this case, we're looking at $40,000, $50,000 in the very back of the deal. And that doesn't include the 20 or 30 that we're going to make right up front. So at the end of the day, these are the 4 paydays that we're going to carve out when we own the property and are selling it on a lease with an option to buy. And again, in this case with Wilson, we're looking at about a $70,000 gross margin. We're pretty excited about that. That's a nice little hit on the property. So you own it, it's distressed, you pay cash for it. You can still buy distressed properties through terms, but we have found, and I have found through my 25 years of doing this, the best deals that come down the pipe almost always require cash. And they require cash because they're distressed and somebody needs out. Somebody's under a situation that requires them to sell, divorce, death, foreclosure, whatever the case is. When the property is distressed, it many times and most times is going to require cash. Now, let's kind of flip the script. Over here, we have more of a retail-based scenario. Now, what that simply means is we have a seller who is selling their home by owner. How we found them, whether we contacted them, they contacted, doesn't really matter in the example. Retail means pretty houses that are in great areas, great schools, great families, great people that you deal with. This is a very large component of our day-to-day business here in Jacksonville, Florida. So we talked to a seller who has a nice house, doesn't necessarily need work. So it doesn't mean it's distressed. It doesn't mean that it's behind in payments. You can have a seller, by the way, who's free and clear. They can still be motivated to sell. So their debt doesn't necessarily have anything to do whether or not we can put a deal together. And I get that question a lot. Free and clear sellers can have to sell at different times. So when we're dealing with a retail property, what we do here is we use a contract for deed or an agreement for deed, which is a mechanism that gives us the ability to buy the property. So we have equitable title, not legal title, and that's more of a technical definition of an agreement for deed that gives us equitable title, which means we're part owner of the property. We just don't have the full legal title, but we have control. Right here, control without ownership is another kind of phrase that is used when you're tying up properties with contracts. Again, this is a big part of our business down in Jacksonville. We will tie up a property under contract, we have full control of it now, and then we will sell it to one of our buyers who is looking to purchase on a lease with an option to buy. I've got to say this again, I said it in a prior video. There's no outfit in the country that qualifies or vets or sets the buyer up for success like we do. We take a lot of time right up front with all of our buyers to make sure that they are going to be successful, or at least that we're setting them up for success from day one. We can't control their ability to pay. We can't control life getting in their way. What we can do is make sure that we give them the best chance to become a successful homeowner that exists. And we're proud of that. We take a lot of time up front. We've got a very unique system. Certainly glad to share that in more detail if you're interested. But how we qualify helps us create homeowners, which at the end of the day is our mission here at the company. We're on a mission to create 10,000 homeowners in the next 5 years. We do that because we take time when we're qualifying our buyers. There's a lot of folks out there that can afford a mortgage, can afford a down payment, but can't walk into the bank today and get a loan. In fact, it's about 70% of our population. 70% of the people walking down the street cannot walk into Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, any of the institutions and qualify for a traditional mortgage. That doesn't mean they can't afford it. It means that banks' requirements are stringent and not everybody is going to meet those criteria. So outfits like ours, where we provide this bridge or stepping stone to home ownership and permanent home ownership, is something that is very, very sought after. We get a property like Wilson, we've had over 200 phone calls in a very short window of time. People that have a good chunk of money to put down, they just can't walk into the bank. By the way, who are those people? Self-employed business owners is a huge demographic. We work with a lot of self-employed business owners who make a lot of money but write it all off when it comes to paying taxes. Banks are looking at your net income on your tax return. So if you write it all off, you have a low net income on your tax return, that's what a bank's going to look for when they qualify you. So people like that are self-employed, have a business, they may have access to a lot of cash, they can put a chunk of money down, they just don't want to show it to Uncle Sam. People that have gone through a divorce or a loss of job or even a job transfer in another city, there are countless scenarios and reasons why people can't get a bank loan. That's why when you're selling on a lease option or selling on terms, you have a lot of interest in the deal. And don't forget, when you sell on terms, that's when you can make the most money in real estate, flipping homes, selling on terms. And so let's take a pretty house that's a retail-based house. We have a contract on the property to buy it. Usually it's a contract for deed, agreement for deed, land installment contract, and then we have a separate contract to sell it, which is a lease with an option to buy. Now, in this scenario, we control it. We don't have legal title, but we have control of the property. This is where, if you make a good deal and negotiate a good deal, you can have 5 paydays on one deal. You can become a Pentagon profit sphere badass, one of our internal statements here, which we have a couple of them that have hit the penna out of the park, and we're always giving high fives because that's a really, really amazing way to take down a deal. So when we control the property and we sell it on a lease option, we're collecting a down payment right up front. And again, 5 to 10% is the minimum we require, with a minimum $10,000 if the 5 to 10% doesn't match up. Full disclosure, there are many times that we will share the down payment with the seller that we have a contract to buy. About half of our deals, we don't give our seller any money. The other half, we are splitting up the down payment with the seller. So it would be very normal for a seller to be willing to sell the property to you on terms, but require some sort of money up front. So we do share that with our seller in about half of the cases. So payday number one is the down payment. Payday number two, when we negotiate with our seller when we're buying the property, we let them know that we will make our first payment 30 days after our buyer takes possession. So we keep the very first payment from our buyer, and then the second payment our buyer makes us, that's when we make to our seller. So it's a very small little tweak that we learned several years ago. By simply asking, we're really telling, but we're asking in the same breath our seller that we keep the very first month's payment, and that's a nice extra payday. If that's $1,500 a month and you can do 10 of these deals next year, that's an extra 15 grand that you've just created by asking for the first month's payment. Very, very simple, and really was a great bonus to our bottom line. The third here is the similar to over here. It's cash flow. It's the difference between what we're collecting from our buyer and what we're paying our seller. You should try to carve out at least $200 to $300 on every deal that you do. Cash flow is obviously a beautiful thing. It's a definition of passive income. You're collecting and receiving revenue without really doing any work. So cash flowing in every deal is really important. And by the way, you get paid up front, you get paid along the way, and you get paid in the back. That's very much a theme of our deals here. So the fourth payday, when you're dealing with houses that you're controlling here, is the very last month's payment as well. Just like we ask our seller for the very first month's payment, we also tell them that we keep the last payment before our buyer goes to get a mortgage. That's a negotiating chip at times, but again, you never know what you're going to get until you ask. When you are making a presentation or it's in a script, and this is part of how we get paid, many sellers are just okay with it. So the fourth payday is keeping the very last payment before the term is up and before your buyer goes to get their bank loan. And the fifth one, which is the same as the fourth one over here, is the back-end equity spread. It's the difference between what you have a contract on it to buy and what you have sold it for. In many cases, the back-end equity spread, or the back-end equity kiss as we like to call it, is the biggest payday of all of them. But at the end of the day, there should always be some sort of a back end. When your buyer goes to get a bank loan, you should be getting a nice kiss at the back. So if you hit all five, you become the badass of the Pentagon. And at the end of the day, guys, you really maximize the profit that you're making on the deal. So terms deals are, like I said, lease with the option to buy is how we sell them. And these are the ways that we try and collect on the payments. I'm going to say one more time, how we qualify our buyers makes a big deal to the transaction as a whole. We want to see people successfully become homeowners. We want to create homeowners. We believe in it. The American dream is alive, and it always will be. And so when you're going into these, if you have the best intentions for your buyers, good things happen. And that's really, really important to share. When you want your buyers to succeed and you're setting them up for success, good things can happen. Not everybody's going to succeed, but when you give them the best chance, you can lay your head on your pillow at night and feel good about the fact that you're really doing good by those that are trying to buy a home. So, okay, hopefully this explains it in detail and that you have a better explanation of what terms deals are, how to structure them, and how you can really hit 4 and 5 paydays on every single deal. That is the essence of this video. If you want to learn how to become a certified badass and know how to execute the Pentagon profit sphere, there's a variety of ways you can work for us. Check the links below. But at the end of the day, I just want to explain that, and hopefully that answered questions and you understand how we structure our terms deals. Thank you very much. I see you've been watching our videos, and I want to give you a big thank you. If you've ever wanted to get into real estate investing, there's never been a better time than now. Click the link below for more information on how you can work with myself and my team, or visit pinkaffiliates.com. That's pinkaffiliates.com. We have a variety of options for you to get started at whatever level you are interested in. Click the link below, visit pinkaffiliates.com, and see what Pink can do for you.